Happy Friday. I thought I would do a little live before the weekend, and this kind of came up in one of my memories or a fun conversation that I recall having. So, this is BCAAs, Are They Worth the Hype? So, some of you are probably starting your fitness journeys and you're probably looking at all the supplements and thinking, oh, what do I need to add to my regime to help boost along? And one of the common questions I get from my new clients, especially those who've been lifting for a while, when they get the new meal plans and so on, is can I still keep my BCA supplements, or what do you think of this BCA? Right? Now, before we answer that, let's just do a little bit of muscle building 101. So bear with me, very brief, rudimentary overview. But essentially, right, we've got some skeletal muscle tissue, and like most things in our body, it's in a perpetual remodeling mode, which means that it's breaking down and building back up, and that's obviously accelerated when you do muscle building. Now, to gain muscle through your training, you need muscle protein synthesis, which is the real building part to exceed the muscle protein breakdown that you have from the exertion of the exercise and the energy that you're expending. Now, in basic terms, protein is made up of about 20 amino acids, and they appear in different combinations and concentrations throughout the food chain, right? So, for example, there's vegetarian sources of protein, but quite often they don't contain a full amino acid protein, which means, that can be problematic when trying to sustain muscle mass. Now, 9 of these 20 amino acids are classified as essential, and they're classified as essential, right, because our body can't make these amino acids. We can only get them from a food source. And from this as well, there are 3 branch chain amino acids, or what we like to call BCAAs, that play a role, quite a critical role actually, in muscle protein synthesis. In fact, leucine can stimulate muscle growth on its own, which is one of those BCAAs. And so, when you think of it in that term, right, that's kind of good enough if your goal is to start the muscle building process. The problem is that the signal that they send by themselves is neither strong or sustained. So you can't just get a leucine supplement, for example, and expect that you're just going to, explode in muscle. It doesn't quite work that way. And then, what we've found consistently in studies is that, especially those comparing BCAAs to whey protein, now whey protein is compared because it actually contains the 3 BCAAs along with a whole gamut of the other essential amino acids, right? So it's it has a complete protein profile, is what we like to say. Now, muscle protein synthesis in this instance was 50% greater with whey, and it lasted a lot longer than anything the BCAAs did. So my point is that you can go and waste all this money on fancy BCAAs because your favorite bodybuilder or whatever uses them, but you're probably wasting your money, and it's probably best spent on other things that might actually work, right? So, if I were to explain this a bit differently, it would be okay, hoping that, I don't know if you follow football or soccer or whatever it is, but imagine you're your favourite sports team, right, and you're expecting them to still win a game with half their players on the bench while the other team has a full gamut, right? Now, I know in some instances it could still happen, but where are you going to hedge your bets? Probably not in the team that's only got half the players in the field, right? So there's 2 key takeaways from this, right? One is that, maybe BCAAs can start the job of building muscle, but they certainly can't complete it. And for that, you actually need all of the amino acids, essential amino acids, right? And ideally, you want a complete protein source which contains the non-essential amino acids as well. Look, and you can't amplify the muscle building process by just simply adding BCAAs to other complete protein source either. So you can't superimpose it and hope that's going to somehow be more beneficial for you. In this case, adding more isn't going to do anything. So what you really need to focus on is making sure you're getting a complete protein source. And then if you do that, then you don't even need to think about leucine or the other BCAAs. And that's really because, as I mentioned before, the overall protein intake that you have tends to be a bigger factor in spiking muscle protein synthesis and building muscle tissue than anything else. And generally speaking, muscle growth is optimized when you consume roughly around 2 grams of protein per body weight distributed evenly throughout the day. So it's not like you can starve all day and then have a giant cow for dinner. You want to kind of ideally eat the same amount of protein throughout the day, which is why you see a lot of fitness people will break down their meals into smaller portions, because the amount of protein that they need to eat would mean that they would sit there for half an hour just eating like half a kilo of animal. It's not ideal, right? So it tends to be broken down. Now I'm saying 2 grams roughly. Technically, it's like between 1.6 and 2.2, and can even go up as 2.5 depending on the person, age, a whole number of things, right? But generally speaking, it's accepted that about 2 grams of protein per body weight, and honestly, that's quite a lot of protein for most people anyway. So just work towards that. Now, the other thing that's really important, right, is that eating carbs or high fats. So, because sometimes you can be in a keto diet and actually still maintain muscle, right? But anyway, the point being is that eating carbs or high fats or other foods will minimize muscle protein breakdown, which is another factor in making sure that you actually have a net gain in muscle output, right? Because as we said before, you're constantly in the process of breaking down muscle and building back up. So, yeah, and then the second point really is that BCAAs really don't need to be in your supplement list. I know it was probably already mentioned in point 1, but the point being is saving money. There's other things you can be spending money on, like your gym membership or some cute threads. I don't know, whatever. And the other thing is I don't like about BCAAs, right, is, for starters, it's artificially processed. There's other stuff that you don't need in there, like artificial flavors and sweeteners. And, most importantly, they're just not as effective as essential amino acids or anywhere close to whole food protein source or quality protein powder. The other thing is as well is the only benefits I can really see in this, just going off script here, is, in the instance where, say for example, you're not drinking enough water and you're trying to get off like sugary sweet drinks or something like that, it could be a good substitute in the meantime, right? I'll bet, there's probably cheaper forms of other non-sugary drinks that you could probably wean on, like maybe kombucha or something like that. But if you really enjoy BCAAs and it makes you feel like you're doing something, then, if the placebo effect is still helping you to get through a hard workout or so on, then by all means keep it in, but don't think that you need to have it to actually sustain the physique that you're trying to build. So let me know if you found that useful, and if you'd like sort of more posts along this line. Let me know what kind of supplements you use. I actually use caffeine quite a lot, which is proven to actually work. Creatine is also another one that is actually quite effective. And then I use things like, I supplement some of my micronutrients. So things like glucosamine, I have fish oil, I have magnesium, those sorts of things, and vitamin E as well, right, just to help keep healthy conversion for my cholesterol levels and so on. Now, I'm not recommending that you guys use those, but there are some things out there that are actually quite beneficial, and, those are the sorts of things that we unpack when we start looking at your individual, calorie, macronutrient, micronutrient needs. Anyway, I hope you have a great weekend. Hopefully I've saved you some money if you're thinking of going and restocking your subs while the sales are on. And enjoy your gym sessions.